Hello, my name is Ian Beabout, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I will be joined by three guests. So we got Gavin Wallace-Ailsworth, the drummer of Bent Knee, with us. Joining us from Rovigo, Italy, is my friend Jaco, who is the Zappa expert and fact checker. Because I've listened to about 7.5 hours of Frank Zappa music this week, and it's all starting to blend together. And last but certainly not least, my good friend and former Deep Cuts radio host, co-host, Mike Lieto. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the recently released Apostrophe 50th Anniversary Deluxe Edition by Frank Zappa. This is a 6-disc collection, which collects the original album and a new master, as well as some studio outtakes, some previously released, some that are brand new, 2 concerts, Colorado Springs, March of 1974, and Dayton, Ohio from the 20th of November, 1974. Also included is a Blu-ray audio disc with a multitude of multi-channel options, Dolby Atmos, 5.1 surround sound, and Frank's original quadraphonic mix. So I thought I would start the discussion by kind of talking about the Apostrophe album itself and how we came to it. What do we think about it? Why are we here? So I'll go with Gavin first. Tell us about your history with Apostrophe.
Well, it was either the second or third Zappa album that I would have come to. Right, like my father had "You Are What You Is," Apostrophe / Over-Nite Sensation, that Ryko disc, and We're Only in It for the Money / Lumpy Gravy. And "You Are What You Is" was first for me, and Apostrophe was probably the second one that I dove into. Which, of course, growing up with that CD, those two albums became so jumbled together in my head that, like, you know, for a long time, right? Because I started listening to this when I was in the 5th grade. For a long time, I was under the impression that the album was just called Apostrophe Over-Nite Sensation. I didn't realize that it was 2 albums combined onto one disc. So really, it's those 2 albums were kind of presented to me as a young 5th grader.
Well, I first started listening to Frank Zappa when I was like 4 or 5 years old, which explains why my brain is so damaged nowadays. And I think I was like 10 or something when I heard Apostrophe. So even though I was 10 or 11, that was after I had started listening to Frank Zappa. It wasn't one of my first albums. I remember ordering it via mail together with Over-Nite Sensation. So those 2 albums are linked, they're linked together for me. Even though nowadays they do sound pretty different. I mean, it's not like one is the continuation of the other. Mm-hmm. It really struck me, both albums struck me as being kind of accessible. I mean, that's if you can understand English, which is something that happens quite frequently in Italy, you can probably play those 2 albums to anyone, and they wouldn't be difficult at all to understand, to enjoy. And one thing that I really enjoyed about Apostrophe, the first time I heard it, was Frank's vocals, which is the thing that struck me. And every time I think about Apostrophe, it's the guitar playing and the lead vocals. It's an album that still has a special place in my heart nowadays, even more now that I'm a fan of Funkadelic, because I tend to liken Over-Nite Sensation and Apostrophe to like Cosmik Love and Standing on the Verge of Getting It All. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good starting point for newcomers, at least.
My coming into this record is a lot different than I think everybody else in this chat. I first started listening to Frank Zappa when I was in sophomore year of high school. My first Zappa album was Stage 2, and then my uncle got me the Grand Wazoo, The Perfect Stranger, and One Size Fits All at Christmas. And from there, it was like, loved almost at first listen. And then I spent the rest of that school year slowly building up the Zappa albums, all the Ryko discs, because that was what was available at the time. Apostrophe was not one of my first Zappa records. I think it was like somewhere between it's in the first 30, I think, because I started to buy all the albums. I remember I bought it as a single Ryko disc in an FYE, and it might have been the same day as the Freak Out. I bought Freak Out and Apostrophe the same day, I think. But yeah, of course I loved it when I first heard it. It was never like a top 10 all-timer Zappa album for me, but it is a great one. And like Jaco said, it's really showcases Frank's vocals. And I think it is the best entry point into the Zappa catalog. It's so easy to love this record. It sounds terrific. There's great playing everywhere. There's great singing, good songwriting. It checks all the boxes. It's a great one, folks. And it's rightly deserved to be as influential as it is.
Mm-hmm. I was going Christmas shopping with my dad. And I was very young. I was maybe 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that area. And he had the Ryko disc twofer with Overnight Sensation. So again, my brain has always melded those two together incorrectly. But I think he wisely censored Overnight Sensation and only played me Apostrophe. But I was drawn into, like you guys said, the voice. The voice was something that was very welcoming to me. I was drawn into the humor, the absurdity of it, the guitar playing, a lot of the backing vocals. And I remember thinking that, Don't Eat the Yellow Snow itself was hilarious. And so that was like, that kind of drew me into it because I was laughing. It was entertaining. But I remember by the time we got to St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast and Father Oblivion, being kind of bewildered, but not quite sure where I was, but still on board, still enjoying it, still hearing something that was really fresh and interesting to me. But it was really Cosmic Debris. That was the song that just kind of brought me to a sense of, oh, okay, this is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. And when I battled childhood asthma, and so when Frank says it'll cure your asthma too, so sarcastically, it was like, oh, something I can relate to in this. So that was my way in. And I didn't hear Overnight Sensation until probably 5 or 6 years later when I was a little older. But when I finally did, I was head over heels in love with Frank. That was my way into the music.
That reminded me on that Ryko disc. I do remember when I was 5th grade, so 9 years old, around there.
Yeah, about the same age I was.
My father was like, yeah, you can listen to this album, but do not listen to Dynamo Hum. So for a long time, and when I Chic Your Booty was the other one he had too. And when I started listening to that, he was like, yeah, you can listen to this album, just do not listen to Bobby Brown. So for a long time, those two songs were like, oh, wait, I can't wait until I can hear them.
Yeah, let's start by talking about disc 1 of this collection. So disc 1 is the original album with a new master. So did you guys have a chance to listen to this new master? I'm mostly interested in the Atmos mix, so I didn't really listen to it. Does it compare favorably to older masters?
Yeah, for me, so I have, besides this set, I have the Ryko disc and I have a 74 pressing from somewhere in the States. I don't know if it's an original. I don't think it is. It was a gift from my old neighbor. I think this sounds like loads better. Like this is
that right?
Super clear. Yeah, I think for me, the main difference, I wrote my notes here, sorry, is like the presence of the presentation. Everything is clear. Everything is nice. There's no muddiness or anything. It's just crystal clear. You can hear everything nice and well. I think this is the best that Tom Fowler might sound on a studio album. Like his bass sounds ridiculously clean in this whole thing. It really makes the rhythm section especially shine among everything else going on in this album. Like, Tom Fowler, all the bass and drums sound amazing on this record. And there's a lot less reverb too. Like for me, the biggest surprise was like Excentrifugal Forz. Like that, I remember mostly from the Ryko disc. I guess Frank must have added some reverb or some other stuff because it sounded like a completely new song to me.
It's a different mix.
On this.
The Ryko was a stereo reduction of the quadraphonic mix hit with reverb, so it's a completely different mix. especially on that song.
Wow.
That's where it's really noticeable.
Yeah, it
Because
sounded
on
like a
the-
different song.
Yeah, because on the Raiko, like the beginning of the song, on the Raiko you can hear the violin more than the guitar, and on the original mix it was the opposite, or maybe it's vice versa. I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, because when I think of that song, I think about that. You know, the
Yeah, that's what I think of.
the kind of chugging violin at the beginning. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a train.
yeah.
Yeah, and I actually see. I forgot, Mike, that your previous version was the '95 version.
Yeah.
And I was digging through my CDs because I thought I still had that, and apparently I either sold it or it got lost in the move. But I compared this to the 2012 disc. And I believe this and the 2012 disc, I think Joe Travers said, are the same source.
Yeah,
Or 2012 master, I meant to say.
Okay, there are various versions of this title. Like the first digital master was the quadraphonic reduction. And then in 98, they did a special version, AU20, I think it was called.
The gold disc.
Yeah, the gold disc.
Yep.
And they used a master of the original mix, which sounded pretty good, actually. It did have some tape defects here and there. I think there's a wow effect on one of the tracks. I can't remember which one. Cosmic Debris, maybe. Then in 2012, Joe pulled up the original master tape, and they did it again in now. I think the 2012 and 2024 are great versions of the title, like most likely the best sounding versions you'll ever find of this. But I haven't compared them.
Yeah.
I don't know which one is best. I think you're probably set with either in this case.
That's my opinion as well. I think the differences between 2012 and this one are very small. And because I A/B'd them, and I felt that this master was a little bit louder, but I didn't hear compression. It was like a good loud.
Yes.
And then I compared, because there's a version on the Blu-ray of the Bernie Grundman, the new master, and I compared it to the one on the CD, and it's not as loud. It's much quieter. So I'm not sure there's much difference between this and the 2012. But if you don't have any other copy of this album, this is a perfectly good version to have. I had in my notes that a good alternate title for Apostrophe would be Bolic and Elsewhere, because the album is essentially constructed from side one is mostly December 1973 Bolic sound, which contradicts what I said on my review, because I had read that Don't Eat the Yellow Snow was in the Overnight Sensation sessions, but I think we've determined that Cosmic Debris may be the only song that was a leftover.
I think
from
so.
Overnight Sensation. Yeah.
Because this whole thing, I was thinking about this, and this whole thing really just doesn't make sense to me, because I think the May or June date comes from Crux of the Biscuit, the booklet, and I don't believe that, and it wasn't reprinted on the new box set.
Yeah.
The reason it doesn't make sense to me is that, first of all, on the December 73 session, Frank says that's the first attempt to record Don't Eat Yellow Snow. But the main song, Don't Eat Yellow Snow itself, had a very different arrangement back then in May and June. So they would have recorded it with that arrangement, which is the one they recorded in December on the Roxy performances. So what I believe they did was re-record that little fragment of the session later on, and then Frank edited it back in. There's actually a moment on the, this doesn't prove anything, but there's a moment on the documentary, the classic album documentary. Joe is showing up the tape of the Don't Eat Yellow Snow suite, and it shows the camera that there are two different kind of tapes, because Frank picked something from a different session and spliced it in, and it's a different brand of tape, and he says it wouldn't play. This doesn't prove anything. but I mean, it doesn't prove that the first part of the suite was recorded back in May. But I just felt like mentioning it could have been useful. To me, it sounds like Frank mixed out Chester Thompson.
I was wondering about
Yellow
that.
Snow.
I was wondering about that.
And Chester is not credited on the Apostrophe album, so there you go.
So it's only Ralph Humphrey on side one.
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
I can definitely hear Ralph Humphrey because the two of them, had a very different drum style, and that's definitely Ralph.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was listening to the album last night and I thought I don't hear two drums.
It could be more evidence of some of the tape coming from earlier also, because Ralph was the only drummer until the Roxy band.
Right.
Chester came in.
But the same session was released on the Roxy Performances, and it's two drummers there.
There's two drummers, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can hear that it's the same basic track. I mean, the bass is exactly the same. There are some little details.
The laughing.
So I think,
the laughing is what is like the immediate connection for me.
Yeah.
And that is an imitation of Ruth Underwood's laugh, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
Which I find very entertaining.
Wow.
It appears in cheapness too.
Yeah.
Ruth, they're making fun of Ruth.
I think Frank just mixed out Chester for whatever reason. Maybe he didn't think it was necessary to have two drummers on that particular track. Basically, you said that an alternative title for Apostrophe could have been Bolic and Elsewhere. And the Elsewhere part is mostly on side 2, right?
Right.
Because Excentrifugal Forz is basically a jam that was later overdubbed and stripped of all the elements except for the drums. And then we have, the thing with Jack Bruce, the title track, the overdubbed demo with Uncle Remus, the modified version of I'm a Rolling Stone. I mean, the theme of the side 2 seems to be old material that was completely reconstructed and represented, which is an interesting concept, I think. And it's something that, of course, Frank did all the time.
Yeah. It puts it in a similar category as Chunga's Revenge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the only reason we have an Apostrophe box set right now is that because it's such a high seller and such a beloved album among fans. Because otherwise it would have been impossible to assemble a collection of it because there were no Apostrophe sessions as such.
How do you guys feel, since I'm dealing with 3 prog rock nerds, how do you guys feel about the idea that the opening of the Yellow Snow Suite is a Pink Floyd parody?
It's completely idiotic.
Is that it's a Pink Floyd parody?
That's what the liner notes suggest.
I think that's very far-fetched.
I agree.
He said
that
guy, Simon Prentice says that basically it's win this prog rock cliche, and I don't see that at all.
Because Yes used it once.
Yeah.
Tall, thick as a brick.
That's right.
Pieces, there's the wind.
Yep.
And then he says that Elton John. I mean, I do like Elton John, but I wouldn't lump it with Yes as prog rock for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. Yeah.
I don't believe that it is a prog rock parody because I don't hear or see much evidence of Frank listening to British groups.
I don't think it's a parody at all. It's a great way to open the snowy setting of Don't Eat the Yellow Snow.
Yeah, it's part of the storytelling.
It fits the album perfectly. Like, come on, man.
The only thing I can think of that would point to him knowing a fair amount about those bands is that one interview, geez, is it like 81?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, where he's asked if bands are progressive and
84.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was 84. Okay. Yeah, where he's like Jethro Tull sometimes, Genesis sometimes.
You know, he liked Gentle Giant because he said that several times.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I don't think he was that interested.
Yeah.
Just in prog rock as a concept, and then Gentle Giant is also a kind of weird prog rock band. You know, they're different from all the others. They're more similar to Frank. Sorry.
They groove.
Yeah,
they do groove.
There's an R&B
funky thing.
Yeah.
They are more similar to Frank Zappa than they are to Genesis.
To me, the wind effect, as we had kind of said, is more about the storytelling. And I think that is the most important word to describe side one of Apostrophe and to differentiate it between side two, with the exception of maybe Stinkfoot, is that side one is it's a piece of storytelling. It's almost cinema for your ears.
Yeah.
And a lot of Don't Eat the Yellow Snow and Nanook Rubs It is spoken word, with some musical accompaniment and sound effects and, weird stuff. But it's not really like a song, which is why it amazes me that was ever a hit. Because, I could see it as being like, people could see it as a novelty thing. But by the time you get to St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast, you are firmly in Frank Zappa compositional. You're in the deep end by the time you reach that point. And speaking for me, I think this is my favorite sequence of the album, is going from St. Alfonso's Father Oblivion into Cosmic Debris, because this is the iconic Ruth Underwood moment.
Ugh.
When she comes in with that vibraphone
Rollo
figure.
interior, yeah.
The Rollo,
Absolutely.
the Rollo interior. That is, to me, that's the iconic moment of this album. That and Talking to the Dog on side two.
It's a masterpiece for sure.
That clip of her, I think it's from the classic albums.
Yeah.
Where she plays it again and says 3 mistakes, one for every decade I haven't touched the music.
Yeah.
That I watch that every now and again when I need a little pick me up, because it's just so
Jaw dropping.
she's so incredible.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still in love with Ruth Underwood, by the way.
Me too.
Oh yeah.
Also, maybe part of why Don't Eat the Yellow Snow was such a hit is it has one of the greatest and most infectious bass lines I think ever put on a record. Like that 7/4 bass line is so cool every time. Like every time it's like, okay, I'm into this now. You sit back and just enjoy the story. It's a good way to suck you into the story. Like the Don't Eat the Yellow Snow suite is also, like you said, one of Frank's finest storytelling pieces.
Yeah.
It's right up there with Gregory Peccary and Build a Mountain is storytelling of the highest order as far as Frank goes. It's a story with a lot of eyebrows.
It's more accessible too.
It's
easier
much more
to follow.
accessible. Yeah, it's much more accessible.
But his stories they're surrealist.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of absurdity to it all. But I like that you mentioned Gregory Peccary, because you see that theme of being ripped off by a guru. You go in search of some sort of truth, and you just end up blowing a bunch of money. You see that come back in Cosmic Debris, and maybe a little bit with St. Alfonso. Maybe there's a little bit of that too.
Not sure about St. Alfonso, because that is based on a commercial. There's the interview on Crux of the Biscuit. Frank was parodying a commercial that he thought was cheesy, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, in the story, he has to go get his eyes figured out, so they send him to, St. Alfonso. You got to go to his parish. Yeah, there is kind of echoes of that. Like, go see this guru, and then it's a bad end. We didn't talk about Father Oblivion too much.
Well, it rocks.
Yeah, that's one of my
Humphrey.
favorite moments.
Ralph Humphrey is what we say about
yeah.
that. It's
The
Ralph
rhythm
Humphrey.
tracks.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the rhythm tracks are something, and even some of Frank's guitar playing is really impressive to me on that track.
Absolutely, all of Frank's guitar playing on that track, because it grooves.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely grooves. I just want to make a public service announcement here, because when they played the Yellow Snow suite, like in 78 or 79, as you can hear on You Cannot on Stage Anymore Volume 1, they played a little bit at the end after Father Oblivion. They played Rollo, which is like the fifth unofficial part of the suite. And the public service announcement here is because Wikipedia used to say that there was a version of Rollo recorded during the Apostrophe sessions that Frank didn't include. And that's absolute bullshit. I mean,
Really?
The public service announcement is Frank Zappa's pages on Wikipedia are chock full of mistakes like that people type because they haven't had anything better else to do. So if you're a Zappa fan and you're watching this video, please help us fixing that.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say.
Rollo wasn't recorded until the live thing, right? Because it was a full piece with the 72 Petite Wazoo.
Yeah.
Then it was shelved and sort of morphed into parts of it were morphed into this, and
There's a
then
version
it
of,
appears later.
There is a version of Rollo recorded at Bolic Studios on the Roxy Performances, but that's a different kind of Rollo. It's a bebop version of it.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
basically, it's wordless anyway. It's not instrumental, but it's wordless. And I don't think Frank was going to fit that into the Yellow Snow suite anyway. I mean, it doesn't sound to me like that. So yeah, no full version of Rollo as we know until 78 that I know of. Unless there's a
Interesting.
tape in the vault that for some reason escaped us.
To me, Cosmic Debris is one of the most George Clinton-esque songs in the catalog.
Yes.
And my shorthand Frankadelic to describe this song and songs like Pygmy Twilight and what was the song that? Oh, I'm the Slime. That's another
I'm the
one. that you
Slime.
could-
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I saw George Clinton for the first time, and they were, he was finishing out. Oh, jeez, I forgot what song it was.
Cosmic Slop.
Cosmos Slime.
Must have been Cosmic Slop because he finished it with a tease of I'm the Slime.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But I think it's like since like the 90s that he plays the little bit of I'm the Slime at the end of Cosmic Slop.
Okay.
I have yet to see where he started to do that, but it would be cool if it started doing that from in honor of Frank's passing. George Clinton absolutely loves Frank Zappa. I mean, if you listen to the track, Jimmy's got a little bit of bitch in him.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great song.
That sounds like Frank Zappa. It sounds like a good Frank Zappa song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The opening of America Eats Its Young, kind of, I forget the name of the
Oh,
song.
yeah.
Kind of, it has this very Zappa quality to it. Also, it's ripping.
Yeah.
Oh, no head, no backstage pass could have been on
Yes.
someone's bench.
Yeah, totally.
Back to Cosmic Debris. This was, of course, a song that had been played live a lot as far back
Yeah.
as like, isn't there a
72?
version 72? Yeah.
He
It's like
Yes.
the
was when it
earliest.
premiered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's the
it's
earliest version.
on Little Dots, yeah.
Yeah. And
Tony Duran's slide guitar is great.
I
And Waka
love-
Wazoo too, yeah.
I love all the various versions of Cosmic Debris we've gotten. The Roxy performances are interesting, but there's something about this studio cut that will always be my favorite. And it could be
Yeah.
because that was the song that won me over to Frank, to his music. That's the song after hearing all the suite before it up to that point, hearing that's the one that made me a fan. So maybe that's my bias, but I think that the studio cut, and I like the version that's included with the little intro on the front of it too. That's included on Crux of the Biscuit. So yeah, what a great classic Zappa song.
It is
I
a
think
classic. I had the
the-
same effect with you. Sorry, with you as the '88 version on Best Band Never Heard in Your Life. That's my favorite Cosmic Debris.
Love
I think. Yeah, that's just forget it. It's just like this one. It's an absolute classic. Can't go wrong with Cosmic Debris.
Yeah.
The studio version has a scary quality to it that is missing from the live versions, I think.
That's a
Like,
good point.
Just the way Frank's vocals sound. I also love Frank's soloing on this
Mhm.
one.
Me
guitar.
too.
It's
Yes.
nasty.
Yeah.
And my favorite alternate, the outtakes that we have on the box set. I think my favorite outtake is the alternate take of Cosmic Debris because we get to hear another nasty guitar solo on it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
And before we get too far along, I thought I would take a moment and remind you to please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to check my description because I have an Amazon wish list there. Okay, back to the program.
You should probably talk about those tracks on side 2. I mean, because there are 3 of the most important tracks on the album: Apostrophe, Uncle Remus, and Stinkfoot in
Sure.
particular.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I'm
Well-
a sucker for Excentrifugal Forz. That was an early
Oh,
favorite.
I
as a
love-
Right,
kid.
yeah, I love that
Yeah.
song.
Yep.
That's a deep cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to bring that up because I love how Frank's solo starts off and it almost sounds like Hendrix to me. And then his lead comes in and it almost sounds like he's doing like a psych rock parody. And then by the end of it, he just franks it.
Yeah.
He just franks it.
He just franks it up. And that and the wordplay and yeah,
One
that's
Yeah.
a great
Hammond
song.
organism is one of my favorite Zappa lyrics in the
Well,
whole thing.
And do you understand? Well, I ask this question as if it's a widely popular thing, but do you know who he's referencing when he talks about Korla plankton?
I do. A little bit, yeah, I do.
Korla Pandit, yeah.
Korla Pandit, yeah.
Korla Pandit, yeah. Who when I discovered that whole thing, or like learned about Korla Pandit, specifically in regards to like, I guess he would also play organ for a lot of like touring spook shows, horror shows in the 40s and 50s. And if you ever saw Tim Burton's Ed Wood,
yeah, it's a favorite of mine.
The scene where Ed is doing his kind of striptease in the Angora sweater and stuff, and he removes the veil at the end, and his teeth are missing. That's Korla Pandit, actual Korla Pandit playing organ in that scene.
Oh
wow!
It's the real Korla Pandit.
Yeah, him and me could sing the blues.
It's one of the rare Zappa tracks that was never played live, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
He never did that. Yeah.
I can't imagine how he could do that live.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I
This
think
song-
he could have, because
He probably
was being
could
Frank.
have. Yeah. This song always is similar to me is like Evelyn the Modified Dog on One Size Fits All. I know they're like completely different musically, but they it was like this like somewhat silly like minute and a half, like I don't know, this like it's almost like a transition from one part of the album to the other. Like Evelyn kind of switches from Pajama People to side 2. This one kind of switches from Cosmic Debris into the rest of the earlier studio stuff on this album.
Yeah.
I don't know. It works as a transition. I think it's great, too. I love this song.
I want to hear how it goes on, because there's obviously a hard-headed at the end. I want to hear what happens next.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a strength of this album to me, is that it's only 32 minutes long. And so like when this box came out, I sat and probably played this album 4 or 5 times in a row. It was just so easy. Like, oh, let's listen to the quad mix. Okay, let's listen to the Atmos mix. Oh, let's listen to the stereo mix. And I just think that there's something about, by the time you get to, I'll put it on and I'll think, okay, I just want to listen to the Yellow Snow Suite. And then Cosmic Debris comes on. It's like, okay, I'll listen through Cosmic Debris. But by the time Excentrifugal Forz comes on, it's like, okay, you're in it. you're not leaving the record. This is the point of no return. And it slides right into that jam session, or an edit of a jam session. And I didn't realize that Frank Zappa fans didn't like that, because I've always loved the Apostrophe title track.
Yeah, me too.
Zappa fans with no taste don't like that.
Frank felt like he was competing with Jack Bruce too much.
Like Cream.
Like Cream,
that band was like 3 like gigantic personalities constantly competing, and then they exploded after Wheels of Fire. I'm not surprised.
I have Godzilla fighting King Kong in my head. It's just like 2 titans slugging it out for our entertainment.
It's some poor drummer in the middle trying to make sense.
Yeah,
trying to hold it all down.
And he does great, by the way, because the drum break in the middle of the song is one of the highlights.
You can sing it.
So good, yeah.
Which is amazing because it sounds like in that extended jam tape that it wasn't even a break. It was just something he did underneath. And that really blew my mind when I heard that. Like, oh, damn, that wasn't even intended as a break, but it's just so perfect.
Yeah, and that edit now, when I hear that on the new Atmos mix, that really stands out to me. Because I thought, wasn't there a note there? Because the guitar solo it's a hard cut, and then you hear that fill. But to me, I'm here with 3 drummers, so I'm sure I'll get a resounding yes. But a great fill for me is one that I can sing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I could sing that fill. But yeah, I love it. I love the extended version. I think it's a lot of fun. So I've always been a big fan of this track.
I like the extended version because it finally gives us an opportunity to hear that jam with good sound quality, because the album mix is just not very good. And I have this theory that it was probably mixed at Whitney Studios, which is where Frank mixed the Phil Maurice album, other stuff like Little Clanton Shuffle on the Hot Rod sessions, the 72 mix. And, that stuff always sounded like how the Apostrophe stuff sounds, very thinny, very weird equalization, lo-fi. So I have this theory Frank just mixed that jam there. And the first times I heard the album, I actually thought it was like a cassette recording. I mean, the quality of it's just not good. So the biggest kick I get from the new 2024 extended mix is that it finally sounds like it should sound.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always thought it sounded really weird also. It's like a muffly effect to it. And I think it's just like, it's almost like out of place. Like it sounds kind of different than the rest of the album. You can that's the most obvious different session tune on the whole record.
Yeah.
But you're right, the new mix sounds so much better, the extended jam.
Yeah.
It sounds great. Finally.
I don't know how that compares to the Atmos mix, but when I was listening to it last night, I thought, I can hear more detail in this. And that's the album edit. I can hear more detail in this than I ever remember being able to hear of every individual drum I could pick out. And again, that is a new mix, like the extended version or the unedited version is.
I do love that Jack Bruce and Frank Zappa did something together, because Cream is like they're possibly my favorite band of the 60s. And whatever opinion I may have of Eric Clapton now or in the 70s, he was an amazing player in the 60s. He's actually on the stuff he plays on the Wheels of Fire live album or the Live Cream, the Volume 1, Volume 2. His guitar playing excites me almost as much as Frank Zappa's guitar playing excites me.
Yeah.
That's too bad that they didn't went further in that direction. But I like hearing Frank playing with Jack Bruce with this in mind, because I think Jack really played with what was one of the great guitar players of the 60s. So it makes sense to me that he would also play with Frank. I think they complement together pretty well, but I also think they wouldn't have been able to do anything else beyond jamming together, because too strong of personalities.
So the next track, Uncle Remus, this is one that has appeared in a lot of different versions over the years, and kind of the epiphany for me was hearing the George Duke demo version, which is on the Waka Wazoo box set, because it's basically all there except for the vocals and some of the guitar leads.
It's the same backing track.
It's the same backing tracks, and this is a case where George Duke had a couple of songs to record, and Frank really liked this one, and he said, "Can I use it?" And George was like, "Well, you paid for it. You paid for the session. Why not?" So it's a rare example of a song that wasn't necessarily written by Frank Zappa. It was co-written, of course. The lyrics were written by Frank Zappa, but for a lot of people, this is their favorite song on the album. How do we feel about it?
My favorite too. I love this song. It's gorgeous. It's wonderful. It's almost like follows the same ethos as Trouble Every Day. Right. But it's the then current, status, I guess. But it's a gorgeous piece of music. It's so wonderful.
Yeah. It's a top 10 piece for me. I think in terms of the whole kind of Zappa milieu, Remus is I think in my top 10.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think you guys should listen to the version George recorded on a 75 album called The Order Will Prevail.
It's great.
Yeah, it's a very different arrangement. It's like a ballad. It's very soulful, and it's quite interesting. He also did Echidna Sarf on that album.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very good.
I think I was going to say in general that George Duke is one of my favorite Frank Zappa guys. It's everything he plays puts a smile on my face. Everything he sings, he could ad lib, he could joke, and kind of pick up on stuff, and we'll get into that in the live shows. But I think I said something in my review, like at this point in the band, Frank was surrounded by people who were, I mean, it's hard to say his equal, but he was surrounded by peers, people in the band who were equally as brilliant musicians as he was. So George Duke is one of my favorite Frank Zappa musicians. Every time he plays the keyboard, I'm I'm there. Can't get enough of it.
Yeah, he's so good.
I like him. I like how much he and Napoleon complimented each other on
Right.
stage.
I was going to
Yeah.
mention that too. Yeah. And listening to the shows, I noticed
They were
that.
like a comedy duo.
Yeah.
And when Jeff Simmons was there, they were like a comedy trio.
Yeah.
There was
They
there
were
that
a funnier
was
Flo and Eddie.
Hey, I was
Yeah.
going to say that. It was like a Flo and Eddie. Yeah.
Yeah.
They shared a
Yeah.
brain thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean. 73 and 74 are probably my favorite live periods of Zappa, and that's one of the reasons, because they sound like happy units.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they're just having fun.
Yep.
All that Moon Trek shit is hilarious. Also, all of the Dupree's Paradise Road stories Duke starts going into, some of that stuff is hysterical.
It kills
Oh
me.
my lord, the boogers, you name it, all this stuff.
And then something happened.
Yeah.
That thing actually changed nightly, so you could probably
Yeah, dude.
make a box set out of the. All of
I,
that.
The Dupree's
I want like a
variations.
Dupree's Paradise like box set. It's like all of them are also ripping. Like
That would be, yeah.
some of that stuff is like the cream of the crop of live Zappa
Yeah.
is all those Dupree's Paradises. Like my God, that shit is jaw dropping.
But yeah, we'll get more to that here shortly. The final track, which is one of the most fascinating to me, and I know that this is another one that some people say, I don't feel that great about Stinkfoot. I don't think it's a great song. But I really like it for a lot of reasons. The kind of the epiphany that we all had when Funky Nothingness was released, that, this comes from a completely different song, completely different sessions. That was something that grabbed me about this tune. But there's also a lot going on conceptually. There's a lot in the engineering and actual recording that's interesting. Like some of those guitar solos, the way they were recorded, you hear like kind of two different sounds going at the same time. That's really cool in the multi-channel mixes too. But this tune just has a feel to it that's unique, and the live versions, with the exception of maybe Helsinki for me, don't quite nail that feel. But I was going to ask you guys, is this Frank on bass?
Yes,
I thought so.
and on this one and on Excentrifugal Force, it's Frank,
Yeah,
Oh.
I thought so. Yeah.
because he replaced Max Bennett's original bass track for I'm a Rolling Stone, which obviously wasn't fitting the music anymore. I'm surprised that you said that some Zappa fans do not like this one, because as far as I'm, the way I always knew was that this was considered the best track on the album, or at least the most important track on the album. So
That's interesting.
that's news to me. It's certainly my favorite. I mean, it's a song that you could play as a straightforward blues number, but Frank doesn't. It's really deranged in the arrangement, the lyrical theme, the production. So it's easy to listen to, but at the same time, it's quite original.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the guitar solo is one of Frank's best.
There's like 3 solos in the song, and they're all different.
And they're all great.
They're all great.
Yeah.
And that
ending.
final solo, there's like 3 or 4 layers of things going on at the same time. And that outro solo, like you can hear the lower voices doing the poodle bites thing. And then there's like maybe some sort of pitched up vocals that are doing it as kind of like a round. And then you got Frank's solo, his climactic solo at the end of it. I think that's the best solo on the record, maybe. Because I love the way that album ends.
Mm-hmm. When Funky Nothingness was released, that was the Zappa release I had been waiting for years.
I know.
I'd actually stressed Joe Travers himself. He emailed me before that came out. Anyway, when I heard I'm a Rolling Stone, we kind of knew that was probably an old track that was re-recorded, because first of all, Ainsley Dunbar is on drums. And then there's a video from like 81 where Frank is doing the sound check and he wants to play I'm a Rolling Stone. And he says the band, just play Stinkfoot and I'm going to sing this on top of it. So we suspected that may have been a cover. What's interesting to me is by comparing the two versions is that how different Frank made Stinkfoot sound from I'm a Rolling Stone. by just taking the drum tracks and editing it. He edited it in a way that he changed the structure a little bit, and he kept only a little bit of the violin somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I really love both tracks. I'm very glad that somehow the original performances survived, because let's face it, I'm a Rolling Stone. It's a great cover. You know, the original guitar solo was great, Frank's vocals, the humor, but somehow, what I mean is that thing could have been released as it was, and it would have been a highlight.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow Frank destroyed it and created something better out of it, which is incredible to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a testament to like Frank the artist. You're right. Like he made it. It's Stinkfoot to me is almost like a sound collage in some ways, and it's really successful. It isn't my favorite song on the album, but I think it's awesome. The whole ending is amazing every time, and it like takes me by surprise. And, you know, singing the Poodle Bites thing over and over again is so, like, it's such a brainworm for me. Like, without bonus tracks coming after it, like, with the CD would end, like, that would be in my head for the next hour and a half. Because constantly a Poodle Bite.
Think I'm really silly for writing a song like this.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great.
And then, now that you mention it, since the Poodle Bites is a callback to Dirty Love, I think that's the Stinkfoot is the first time that Frank mentions conceptual continuity.
Yeah,
it is. Although it appears in a press kit from the early 70s. And I had a quote on that in my other video. But yeah, that the climax of this song, I mean, other than the guitar solo, is a man having a philosophical discussion with a poodle.
Yeah,
it's great.
That to me is like, okay, that's the iconic Frank Zappa moment.
You know, we know that Frank was dead set against drugs, but I can see why some people would think that he was smoking too much pot.
Let's discuss the outtakes at the end of disc 1. So some of this was issued before on Crux of the Biscuit, and this created a lot of buzz from the Necessary police saying, "Ooh, this isn't necessary. We already have Crux of the Biscuit." Well, I think Crux of the Biscuit's out of print, so I'm happy to have them.
Sometimes I get a little taxed by like outtakes and stuff, but I find all of these really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, like they're all cool nuggets.
Yeah, and if I have one complaint, I wish that Crux had been included in its entirety here, because I don't own it.
I don't either.
I think it would be nice to have. But we have an alternate take of the basic tracks of Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, which is the album arrangement with the wind sounds, and it's different.
Yes.
It's different than the version that's on the Roxy Performances studio.
And it's partly the same take as the album version if you listen close enough. I mean, there's a little bit that matches. Yeah.
Yeah. So that created a little confusion for me when I was putting together my review, because it seemed like that stuff was recorded during the Overnight Sensation sessions, but I guess we've kind of come to the conclusion it probably wasn't. But it's cool to hear that. It's also cool to hear the Nanic Rubs It basic tracks outtake, as well as the session outtake. We'd talked about the classic albums video, and there's a moment where Dweezil plays that little segment. And I thought, what is that? I want to hear that little bit. That sounds like it's a missing part of the story.
That's fascinating to me, because Joe on that part of the video says that Frank was that was a section that was physically cut out of the master tape and put in at the end of it, like the Beatles did with Her Majesty on Abbey Road. The only reason it exists is that it was appended at the end of the master reel, and it's making me wonder how many times stuff like that happened on classic albums, because it happened. It also happened with Passion Play.
Yep.
They found the two extra verses at the end of it. So that's fascinating. I think the reason that stuff got stuck at the end of the tape was that you could discard it more easily. Yeah. And for various reasons, they never did. So it's great that all of this survived, actually.
I agree. Yeah, and you do hear Frank perform that little section in some of the later 74 shows. So it apparently was still on his mind. I mean, you hear it on Erie, here at Erie 74. So it's cool that was still on his mind. But we do have okay, we have a couple of mix outtakes. Excentrifugal Forz, which doesn't sound a whole lot different to me. It's a little bit different.
No.
Different guitar effects, right?
Yeah.
Just some different harmonizer settings or whatever.
Yeah. A mix outtake of the title track. Now, the mix outtake of Uncle Remus, I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Is that the one that's on Crux of the Biscuit as well?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say,
Yeah.
I thought I'd heard that one before. Yeah, but it's excellent.
It is excellent. Yeah, it's like another chorus or another verse or something.
There's a repetition of one of the verses.
And more soloing, and there's interaction with the Ikettes.
Boo, what was that? Yeah.
I loved it.
But I really enjoyed that version. So I definitely wanted to highlight that as a favorite, and I'm glad that got ported over from the other one.
And then there's the piano and vocal mix of Uncle Remus, though, that we didn't touch.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
It is.
Yeah. I almost cried. I got to be honest with you. The first time I heard it, I almost cried.
It's beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Love it. A real nice nugget here.
It's pretty hard to actually cry at something that says that, a lyric that says that he's going to knock the little jockeys on the rich people. But I almost did.
Well, there's such a hopeful sense of renewal in that song of it's really unlike anything else in Zappa's catalog, I think.
Yeah, it's very unique, and like we said before, it's so beautiful. You know, how can it not touch your heart a little bit?